Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish Prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, and welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well. Been another absolute mayhem of a week, lots to get through in Scotland and out of Scotland. And let's get into, let's not hang about. We've got the full gang here, as you can see today, and a great place to start. Philip, I'll give you your Sunday name. And if I is that there was an opinion poll come out this week, and for the first time ever down south, the Greens overtook Labour in a poll by quite some margin as well. And it goes back to the other things I've been saying for the last few weeks. Reform are falling back. I'm beginning to think more and more each week that the star is beginning to fade in Reform, but the Greens have become a force down south.
Yes, and we know why. I mean, this is the Sky report, obviously. It's a sensational poll. They've polled higher than Labour in the latest YouGov poll, when it puts them 2 points off Reform UK, as you say, which are falling behind a bit, and 5 ahead of the governing party. The Green Party has leapfrogged Labour into second place. It's a first time, man, for a long, long time. The Greens are up 4 points to 21%, driven to a significant extent by the publicity from the Gorton and Denton by-election, according to the pollsters. Now, Anthony Wells, head of global polling at YouGov, says this reflects the Greens appearing to be more viable option and less of a wasted vote. Now, the YouGov weekly voting intention polls put Reform UK on 23%, which is down 1, and the Greens up to 21%, which is up 4. Labour and the Tories tied in 16, both down 2, and the Lib Dems unchanged in 14. The Greens are now the most popular party in all age categories. Let that one sink in. Under 50, that is. Some 49% of 18 to 24 would back the Greens, as well as 27% of 25 to 49-year-olds. The top choice. Now, what is this? This is the Zach Polanski effect. The Greens have done what the Tories and the Labour previously did. Get a minority to promote and implement radical policies. Right-wing policies that went against the people's best interest for the Tories and Labours when they get Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and they get other minority individuals to implement radical right policies because they're harder to challenge. And in the case of the Greens, to have a Jewish man stand up against the genocide in Palestine, about bloody time, Westminster, is the same strategy. The difference is Zach speaks the truth and continues in a long line of Jewish heroes who stood against the right wing, such as the anti-apartheid activists in South Africa. People, you need to remember this. This is the natural state for people who believe that never again from the Holocaust. The likes of Harry Schwartz, Helen Suzman, Nadine Gordimer, Arthur Shackleton, Dennis Goldberg, the list goes on. This is a step in the right direction. What does it mean for Scotland? Bugger all, because we are represented by green minnows that are actually a waste of time. They'll jump on various bandwagons, and they're not really going to support us in our fight for independence.
As they said, the Scottish Greens said that independence isn't a red light for them, and that is a distinction we should make, Phil, is that the Greens in England are not like the Greens in Scotland, that's for sure. But Alan, throughout history of our lives, you get these, it used to be the Liberals would win all these by-elections and they'd be looking good in the polls, and then but when it comes back to general election time, people fall back into line. Is that what you think might happen, or is there something different going on here underneath?
Well, I think if these polls are true, I think what's shown is not support for the Greens, not support for reform, but a total meltdown of the Westminster system. People are sick and tired of the two parties that are currently in place. I mean, if you look back into history, it used to be no political parties at Westminster. It was just the rich fighting with one another, trying to make deals to fill their own pockets. Then it created the party system, and it was the Whigs versus the Tories. The Tories were more the Royalists. Then the Whigs manifested itself into the Liberal Party. Then we had the emergence of the Labour Party, who were the supposedly workers' party. Then they got rid of the Liberals. The Liberals then become a minority party. So it was again the two-party system. And now we're coming up to 2026, and we're having a change of political parties again. That's all that's going on here. It's a change of parties, not the change of system of government. Westminster is entrenched in a two-party system that they cannot get out of, regardless of how much they try. They always have this two-party system. And it's the same policies that get brought in because we all know the political parties do not run a government. The government is run by the Westminster civil service establishment. It doesn't matter who you've got bums on seats down there. It is just an evolution of politics in Westminster. What this country needs is a political revolution, not evolution. Evolution takes too long, and a lot of the things are just the same. We need total and utter political revolution so as we can change this system, not just the parties of power.
Alan's got a good point there, Eva, that, it's, just swapping the Labour Party for the Tory Party or whatever, it's just the same. It's just a different voice this time. But do you think this is a more deep-rooted change in British politics that's sort of mirroring that? Because things are changing out in the outside world, as we know. Is there a change going on here? Is there something underlying?
I think what's underlying it, as Alan has already described, is that people are scunnered with business as usual. And there was no greater evidence of that than the other night when BBC Debate Night was on. Obviously, a Scottish programme, far be it from me to advertise the British Brainwashing Corporation, but they had 5 supposed Scottish politicians appearing, including Lorna Slater of the Greens, Keith Brown for the SNP, Malcolm Offord. And what was really noticeable was, despite the fact that the election is a couple of months away, they were arguing and screeching and carrying on. Lorna Slater interrupted everybody. She talked over everybody else. But throughout the entire programme, which lasts the best part of an hour, guess what word was never mentioned, not even once?
Yeah.
The word independence. And they were arguing about policies in relation to oil, climate change. Keith Brown had the brass neck to complain that Labour had failed in their promise from the 2024 general election to save Grangemouth, forgetting, of course, that his party failed to save Grangemouth too, and his party equally well failed to deliver independence, and yet he's got the magnificent opportunity on that stage to talk about the benefits of independence relative to our economy, or about renewable energy, or child poverty, or the NHS, or immigration, or any of the matters that the audience, who were very clued up, very switched on, were raising, and he didn't do it once. And that's why people are scunnered with business as usual and the stances that the old-fashioned political traditional parties used to take, because they're fed up hearing one thing in a party political broadcast, or reading it on a leaflet, or when somebody chaps your door because the election's looming, but they see something different in practice. And in practice, what people are seeing with politicians now is less of the Dennis Skinner accusing people, less of the Tony Benn delivering magnificent speeches, less of the Robin Cooks of this world, less of the Jim Sillars and the Margot McDonalds. What they're seeing instead are folk that are completely and utterly out of touch with the normal lives of the ordinary people of Scotland and the United Kingdom in a wider context. That's principally why folk like the Greens, who pretend to be listening, pretend to be focusing on the real bread and butter issues, that's why they're starting to come up in the polls. But they'll be like the rest. They're all captured. It's all about party loyalties, who's got what and whoever else. And in due course, they'll be infiltrated and they'll be turned if they haven't been already. So it's why Alan's right when he says, let's look at what people actually want in Scotland. When you've got 60% at least of the population crying out for independence, the reason they want independence isn't just because we're an ancient nation. It's not just because we used to be independent. It's because we need the full economic powers and abilities that independence and only independence brings before we can turn our country around. We say it week in and week out. In the absence of independence, you can stick every other policy where the sun doesn't shine, because you'll never deliver what the people of Scotland need, deserve and can afford when you're shackled to Westminster and dictated to by what's happening there. I mean, quite frankly, I wish we weren't talking about polls about Westminster, The SNP shouldn't be crowing if they're the highest in terms of the potential return from Scotland to Westminster at the next general election. They should be chapping every door and filling the streets with people who support the notion of independence and unity above all else to deliver that this year. Absolutely,
well said. But I agree with Eva, Lloyd, that the system itself is completely goosed. It's needing replaced. But do you think because it's the digital age that this is giving Greens this new look and they're getting a bit of support? Or do you think there's something? Do you think there's anything deep rooted and changing in the British political scene?
I think people are looking for change because they keep getting promised change by one party, the other party, and then along came the Greens and they've said change. But what I see here is, partly because I'm a bit of a political anorak, is green in itself is a label. Green as an emotional response in people. People think it's virtuous. People think it's a good thing. It's about saving the planet, saving the whales, hugging the trees. The fact of the matter is that's not been the case for a good 2-3 decades now. The Green Party in Scotland, the Green Party in Wales, the Green Party in England are very firmly part of the system. And it's because Zach Polanski puts a kind of torpedo into the ship of state by saying things like, I'm a Jewish man and I support the Palestinian right to self-determination, that marks him out as some kind of radical. Well, I would remember, or I would remind people of a certain woman called Petra Kelly, who was the leader of the Greens in Germany, the Greens in Germany being the largest of the green organizations in the 70s, the 80s and the 90s, who eventually was outed as being, in actual fact, an operative of the Central Intelligence Agency of the United States. Now, that aside, what concerns me about these opinion polls is the reflective glory that the Greens in Scotland get from the Polanski Greens in England being high up in the polls. And I've noticed, particularly over the past few weeks, that the in-house comic of the Sturgeon cult, the national notional newspaper, has Zach Polanski or his equivalent on the front page of their newspaper or writing an article in their newspaper practically every week. What I don't for the life of me understand is why the leader of a party that does not stand in Scotland, because remember, as we all know, the Greens in Scotland are an entirely separate organisation from the Green Party in England and Wales, of which Zach Polanski is the leader. Why is it that the National, the so-called independent supporting newspaper, spends so much ink and so many inches of column to promote Zach Polanski? I would suggest it's this, that they have a very similar outlook on issues, particularly the issues of gender, the rights of women and girls. Yes, exactly. And because Zach Polanski and the Green Party of England and Wales approach to the campaign against violence against women and girls and the rights of women and girls actually are harmonious, and harmonious with the editorial board of the National, that's why they're being promoted. And as a result of that, this week we've had the tiny fists of fury attacking the Scottish National Party and attacking his what does tiny fists of fury call John Swinney again? Oh yes, his political parent, his political father, his political dad. So he started attacking him on the basis of policies which should be green policy. So he's attacked the Scottish government over the issue of the US Air Force's use of Prestwick, as he has in the past criticised the Scottish government for its relationship with Israeli organisations, companies, and indeed with the Israeli government. That's all very well, if it wasn't for the simple, straightforward fact that all I can see in this is the utter and complete cynicism of whoever are the puppet masters of the Green Party in Scotland, manipulating them into a position where it will suit John Swinney, after he fails in the May election, to achieve his majority. He will be able to distance himself from the Greens, and the Greens will be able to distance themselves from the Scottish National Party, thereby creating a schism in the so-called United Movement for Independence. Beware. If it says green, give it a scratch just to find out whether or not that's just been painted over blue.
Indeed, they said they could work with Labour, could work with Tories. That was Lorna Slater when she was telling us it wasn't independence wasn't a red line for her. But you've brought me nicely into the next, because there was also polls up in Scotland for the Holyrood election. And here's this, they're suggesting that the SNP are going to drop just a wee bit short, and just leading into what Lloyd says, that they're going to need supported by the Greens or some other party, maybe the Alliance to Liberate Scotland, maybe Alapa Party, who knows? They may be the kingmakers, but they're going to fall short there, Phil. But they're still leading by a country distance over the others. And again, Reform falling back. You're on mute, mate.
Yeah, to reach for I've got it on another screen. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Alex achieved this, but never again while this leadership of the SNP are in place. So Reform falls behind Labour in Scotland in the election. The SNP remains set to be the largest party, 20 points ahead of Farage's party. The SNP on track to secure a comfortable victory. This is la-di-da. This is normal, but there's a reason for that. So this is the Ipsos Scotland Political Pulse survey of 1,096 adults. Remember, that's the number of people that were quizzed. Conducted between February 19th and February 25th, and it shows the SNP on a 36% of the Scottish Parliament constituency vote, which is fine if there's a good turnout, which is another story. But that's a 16-point lead over Labour in second place, 20% of the vote, and 20 points ahead of Reform on 16. Now, support for Labour has increased after polling shows Annis's party falling into third place behind Reform in December. But as I said, Alex achieved this. It will never be done under the current leadership. And this is because the vast majority of voters in Scotland do not pay attention to politics as we and our friends and colleagues that watch this and other political shows in Scotland understand. Most people, lots of people I know, still think the SNP stand for independence. This vote is a reflection of the fact that 60% or so of Scots want independence, and most believe that the Scottish National Party does what it says on the tin. The problem is it's compromised, and the thieves who currently are in charge will never take us to independence. That's the problem. And it's been the case since Herr Nicola took over. We need to terminate the current leadership of the SNP from politics and let them wander the hills like the Kenny McCaskill lost in the mountains currently is.
I didn't know that about Kenny. Are you serious? Has he been lost in the mountains?
Well, maybe. Wishful thinking, maybe.
Behave yourself. On that, you'll notice that the Greens had 7% in the constituency vote, Alan. But here we're seeing that the SNP dropped 10 points and the Greens go up by 9. Now, it doesn't take, I'm not John Curtis, but I think I'm better looking though. But it doesn't take a genius to work out where those votes from the SNP are going. But where's the 26 going? Are they going to do the SNP 1 too? We need them getting into this other. That's where we need them going.
Well, I mean, my opinion just now is the opinion polls that are coming out in the past few years are pure political manipulation. They are looking to show the SNP just about there. So maybe if a few more of you come out and vote for them, they'll get just over that hurdle. Nonsense. It's not going to happen. They will not do it, and all you're going to do is waste your votes. But I'll tell you, if you're thinking about giving your second vote to the Green, I will say 2 things that you will never hear coming out of the Greens' mouths. 1, we hereby declare unilateral independence for Scotland. That will not come out of a Green's mouth because they don't have the bottle to push it through. They'll do what Westminster tells them. And here's another thing that will not come out of their mouth. Today is International Women's Day. We hereby give our solidarity to every single adult and child human female. We have no problem saying that, and we have no problems meaning that. That will never, ever come out of a Green politician's mouth because they do not believe in giving rights to women. So second votes to the Greens takes away women's rights and gives you not 1 inch closer to independence. So people, please think very carefully. There is one party standing in 7th of May to get independence for Scotland, and that is the Alliance to Liberate Scotland. We are not giving the SNP an easy chance. We are challenging them on some of the constituencies and all of the lists, because the SNP's feet must be held firmly to the flames. Otherwise, they will do nothing. We've got to make sure they're not having a comfortable time in Westminster. And if they do not push independence like they are promising, and I don't mean a referendum, I mean independence, then our members of Parliament will have no problems bringing that government down. Because the people of Scotland's voice must be heard, and heard loud and clear. Independence, nothing less.
Well said, Alan. You had me worried when you said you won't hear these phrases coming out of a green mouth. Knowing your past record, I was a wee bit nervous there. But thankfully, you were a good boy. Eva, here's a breakdown, the sort of the colour map, going where, you know, the yellow, the swathes of SNP, then there's this big area, of course, which is one Liberal seat, which I think could be possibly not turn out orange after all. But these numbers, are they to, you know, form opinion, or are they the opinion? What do you think?
Well, can I say, first of all, Roddy, there's no doubt in anybody's mind that you're better looking than John Curtis, but you've given me a hallucination, because I was thinking about the swingometer and wondering exactly when it would be that you'll be producing your own swingometer for the purposes of our delectation and that of the viewers, because I think that would look pretty good if you can show us how the swing will go from A to B and back again. No, that opinion poll is designed to influence opinion. It doesn't reflect opinion. We know this from activities on the doors and in the streets. Alan was out campaigning yesterday in Dundee, and the feedback he was getting was that folk were not voting SNP because they could see exactly what they were not going to get. And this is the dilemma, because what does voting SNP get you now, either in a Westminster context or more particularly for Holyrood purposes? What you'll get is more of the same moribund, lacklustre government by fools who don't reflect in the main the opinion of the general population, and in the main seek to implement policies that are either stupid, like trying to ban things that are already banned, having to amend hate crime legislation because they didn't use women in it in the first place when they should have included what, you know, that's part of the programme. And I can't bear to go back into the gender recognition stuff, but the SNP don't reflect the opinion of the whole Yes movement. We know that actual support for the SNP is somewhere in the low 30s. So that map that shows them taking practically every constituency in Scotland is less than accurate, in part because the actual support for independence is approaching double the level of support for the SNP, and in part because those polls don't take into account other independent supporting parties, of which at the moment the Greens simply are not one. And many people, myself included, would say that the SNP leadership are not currently supporters of independence, because if they were, their policy would not simply be vote SNP and then Westminster will be obliged to grant us another referendum. Again, we say that every week too. So that poll's there to make sure that people in Scotland in the main vote SNP, because voting SNP ties us to Westminster for at least the next 5 years under the devolution settlement. If that poll were an honest one in Scotland only, it would be a poll to establish the extent of support for independence. And when there is established support for independence in an election, in an electoral event, that's when we're perfectly entitled to declare our independence. And that's what we should be doing in May. So people should not be fooled by the prospects of an SNP victory or the prospects of what that SNP victory will actually involve or include. Because at its highest, it'll be John Swinney with a begging bowl to get the self-same answer that has been given repeatedly since the referendum of 2014. We spoke last week about the Scottish Parliament having debated how there's no current legal route to independence and it requires Westminster and Holyrood to talk to each other. Well, since that grand announcement was made, there's been nothing further on these potential talks. It's just been parked. It's been parked to be brought out at some later stage, and if it was up to the SNP, probably a couple of months before the Holyrood election of 2031, by which time I'll be long retired, if I'm still here. So in terms of what's people's opinion in Scotland, their actual opinion is they're scunnered with every single party politician that they see on the telly. It doesn't matter if it's Russell Finlay having a rant about something or any of his cohorts in the Tory party. Doesn't matter if it's Labour, SNP, Greens. Everybody's sick to the back teeth unless you're in a political bubble. So I think at the moment, it looks like turnout for the election will be lower than usual because people are scunnered.
Yeah.
There'll be a lot of spoiled ballots because they'll be saying none of the above. And it makes it all the more certain that the only way for people to proceed sensibly in terms of how to use your vote to best advantage is to look at other alternatives, think out the box. What's your number one priority? Because if your number one priority is independence, you'll vote for an independent supporting candidate of whatever party or no party they actually are, so that we have a majority for independence, nothing less, and then we start sorting everything else out.
Yeah, absolutely, 100%. Let's just assume the poll is true, Lloyd. The one thing I can see coming across of this is that there's three blocks from our perspective as independent supporters. There's the British Unionist bloc, and Reform have got that at the moment. They're the top dog. They're not actually biting into the independence vote, which we know is over 50%. It's the SNP are staying static at 30. The biggest problem for Scotland is that 20, 22, 23% that are sitting at home, totally unenthused, totally demotivated. That's got to be the target for everyone within the independence movement.
Yes, it is. But because the demands of that 20% are action on the central policy of independence, then there are those who I think shy away from it, including the current leader of the Scottish National Party and First Minister of Scotland. But I think, I take a lot from these opinion polls for one reason. In parallel to the opinion polls which are related directly to the Holyrood or the Westminster parliamentary elections, these are opinion polls which are for the political class, including the commentariat, the political journalists, and those that work for the political parties, who are part of effectively the governmental or legislative structure. You're asking people to make a preference on organisation structures from within politics. And that's why you get the variations, the colossal variations. Whereas when you treat people like adults, like we did in 2014, in September 2014, and you treat people like adults in the opinion polls that ask the direct question, do you believe Scotland should be an independent country? The most consistent opinion polls in our country, in Scotland, in the past 2 years, are the opinion polls that ask people the adult question, do you believe Scotland should be an independent country? And consistently, when treated like adults, the people of this country have said in the majority that they believe we should be an independent country. Now, we have to take great heart from that. It's a danger for us to get involved in the conundrum that is the 35% support for the Scottish National Party and the 55 to 65% support for independence. What we need to be focusing on is in some ways encapsulated in what you asked me, Roddy. Do I see any great change from within the parties? Only if the Scottish National Party recognises, and if they had a political strategist of any stature whatsoever, or any intellect whatsoever, is it not blatantly obvious that if there is a gap between when you are supposedly the major means by which independence will be delivered, if you have a 20% to 25% gap between the support for you and the support for the idea that you supposedly propound, then surely you would put that right at the very top That would be the basis upon which you would go into the election, on the basis of what the people are effectively telling you consistently. If you want that, if you genuinely want that responsibility of a majority, John Swinney, First Minister of Scotland, then you wouldn't be making these illusory promises of they will have to give us what we want if we get the majority. Vote for us. They will have to give us what they want. Tell that to Jerry Adams. Tell that to Michelle O'Neill. Tell that to Eamon de Valera. Tell that to Jomo Kenyatta. You know, tell that to Kenneth Kaunda. If you're unaware of who these people are, they're all people who have led their countries to freedom from the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. The simple fact of the matter is, there is nothing clearer than when comparing the two opinion polls and what the unique selling points of the different political parties are. If your unique selling point is independence, and an opinion poll is telling you consistently for 2, 3, 4, 5 years that people want what you're selling, why are you not selling it? Why is the shop shut? What's the problem, John? I think I know what that problem is. He is frightened, scared, witless of what the possibilities are for us as a country, whereas the rest of us in the movement are excited, truly excited by the possibilities we can create by becoming an independent country for the future of our country, and more importantly, for the future of our people who currently are getting the rawest deal in the UK.
Indeed. You ask if we knew. Sadly, I'm old enough to remember every one of them. Shows you how old I am. I remember them. Kenneth Kaunda, yes, indeed. This week, the election's underway, the campaigning, and what we're seeing, Phil, is reform. Only reform can stop the SNP, is their slogan, not we can make your life better. Labour, no, only voting Labour can stop the SNP. Even Stephen Kerr, God bless his wee cotton socks, MSP, who's in big danger of losing his seat, even on the list. Only a vote for the Conservative and Unionist Party will beat the SNP. They forget what they're doing, but they roll out the usual things. I mean, the Greens, as I've said, are talking about independence, and then from the 8th of May onwards, they'll shut up for another 5 years. Labour are talking about this one. Now, 5 years ago, you must remember this, a rave from the grave there, Phil. They're going to revive the Glasgow Airport rail link if they win. One, it would be a big white elephant. It's not required, but this is what they can't say they're going to abolish the House of Lords in the Scottish election. This is just, it's just nonsense.
Indeed, it is. But the first point would be, stop the SNP from doing what exactly? Stop the SNP from continuing to kowtow to the British government and prevent independence? This is politics. Politics, as I've said since I went down to Westminster, is the management of perception. It's got nothing to do with reality. And the perception that SNP represent independence is exactly what the British government want the people of Scotland to believe, because as long as Nicola and her ilk are in control of the SNP, Scotland will remain shackled to London. It's a simple fact. We know this. Your average punter doesn't know this. The Garrel, I mean, for me, I would say it is a joke. Scotland politics, it really is a joke at the moment. Glasgow and Edinburgh airports are small provincial airports, okay? Old, decrepit, and they have minimal flights. Just check that against all of the other countries in the world. It's embarrassing. Oslo, Copenhagen and Stockholm have more flights than Glasgow and Edinburgh combined. Second-rate region of the UK, that's all we currently are. And independence, nothing less, is the only way for the Scottish people to get the Scotland we want. So this comes down to, forget these gimmicks from Labour, forget the gimmicks from every single party that comes out, including the SNP. First thing we need to do, that we understand as independentistas, is unite. with all stripes of the independent supporting community under a single alliance. That's what we did in the Yes campaign. That's why we came so close to it. So uniting with every stripe of the independent supporting community under Alliance to Liberate Scotland, or in tandem with the ISP, Sovereignty, ALBA, Salvo, SSRG, Yes United, and finally, when we dethrone the traitors at the head of the SNP, a party we all gave considerable support to over the decades under Alex and before, then we will have our time. But in the interim, we need to stand together, as many of us as possible, and show that the SNP are indeed the obstacle to independence. And all these gimmicks rolling out the Glasgow link, all the other gimmicks by the Greens and everybody else, is the management of perception. Don't play their game. We need to set our own rules, and that is taking control of our own country.
Indeed, they've all got wee gimmicks. They're all pushing things to show how they're the people, Alan. And here's another, I mean, this is a good one. And I'd like to say it because when the Ferguson Yard this week has been given a contract for 4 ships. Now, prior to this, we know some ferries were built in Turkey. And the unionists were screaming and bawling that, this is terrible that you're going abroad to build these ferries. And of course, now that they're putting the ferries into the Clyde, they're still complaining, talking about, it's jobs for the boys and it's so wrong. You just can't keep the unionists happy, can you?
Yeah, well, this is how British politics work, isn't it? I mean, remember the last election, well, the one before the last one, when Tony Blair came in, they were having a bonfire of the Quangos. And as soon as they were elected, they doubled the Quangos. We had last election, we're going to have lowest fuel. Fuel bills have gone up. We were also promised to become an equal partner of this union. Yet during the Smith Commission report, Labour opposed more powers coming to the devolved Parliament than what the Tories did. That's how Scotland doesn't have the powers that we were promised. Labour stopped them. But the other thing they do is they force the government to do things, such as the Edinburgh trams, then blame the SNP for the Edinburgh trams.
Yeah.
The SNP voted against it and democratically put it ahead. I mean, the ferries, they condemned the SNP for having external building of the projects, then condemned them for having internal building of the projects. It's just madness from the Labour Party. But what do you expect from a party who are telling you to vote for them, when they are led by a party leader that none of them support? Because they've already called for the resignation of Starmer. Starmer is their leader. So why do you think the people of Scotland should put their trust in Starmer when you yourself do not trust the man and say he is incompetent? It's just madness. The Labour Party don't even know they're doing it. I mean, we need to get out of this nonsense. This stupid party political point scoring, when it is damaging the country of Scotland, has to stop. We need parties in place, whether they're in government or in opposition, who are doing their best for the country and listening to the people of the country. Because they are not employed by party whips. They are employed by the people who elect them. And it's time that they started doing what the people elected them for. And that is to run the country, get rid of poverty, build our infrastructure, build a good, strong economy, and make sure we are a peace-loving nation like Scotland has always been.
There's 7 parties in the Scottish Parliament, Eva. 4 of them, their job is to protect England's hegemony over Scotland. They're not there to work for Scotland. That's a fact. And another one they were complaining about was, we've spoken off and on here about the people who own the ports and won't invest now. It's the same people, Peel Group or something they're called. They own their Drossen Harbour, but they wouldn't invest in it. Same as they don't invest in the ones on the East Coast that we could turn into ferry terminals. And so the Scottish Government have nationalised this, which I personally think is correct, so they can, because it doesn't fit the new ferries that are coming on. And this is what we need to do, is to take over these ports. If they're not going to use them and utilise our natural resources, we should be nationalising.
That almost goes without saying, Roddy, that all ports should be in public ownership.
Absolutely.
And what we've also have is a direct ferry route from Scotland to Europe and back again, and bypass the English ferry ports, because Scotland used to have a direct route and it had that for hundreds of years. It's why there were really significant links between, for example, Scottish and French and Belgian universities, because people went to study in Europe hundreds of years ago and returned to Scotland and spread the word. I mean, that Scotland is treated as a backwater as far as Westminster are concerned, and it's deliberate, because if the people of Scotland had the access that they should have to all public resources and public facilities, and the ability to trade and the ability to travel, whether it's for business purposes or for pleasure, it just opens up horizons. It opens up horizons economically as well as on a personal basis, and that's the problem. Labour know perfectly well that the Scottish people have a massive potential, but at the moment they're doing what Martin O'Neill said, they're reducing the expectations of the people of this country, and that is wholly and substantially wrong, and it's wrong-minded. And you know what it kind of brings me in a long circuitous route round to saying is that there are so many things in Scotland that are good that we could be expanding on and building upon. An awful lot of that is third sector work, some of it's charitable work. But what came out this week from the Scottish Information Commissioner, David Hamilton, was that even he was astounded at the number of public bodies that there are in Scotland. And he said he kept finding new authorities and regulators that he never knew existed. There's an entire industry in Scotland of people who are doing jobs that most of us have never heard about. We don't understand, we don't know what they're doing, when what we really want is innovations like taking over into public ownership Ardross and Harbour and others like it. What we really need to create jobs and create hope and to address the needs of our people is a National House Building Corporation. It is a national energy company. I mean, it's donkey's years since the National Energy Company was promised and then quietly done away with. Instead, we're getting UK Energy, which we've already covered, but we know is in fact bringing very few jobs, if any, to the Scottish workforce. We need to have a government who is focused foursquare on the needs of the people of Scotland and how we can best use our resources, whether we're using harbours for ferry travel, or we're using it to land our fish, or we're using it to invite visitors from elsewhere in the world. We should be driving our economy using innovation and imagination, but it's no rocket science. It is perfectly clear that public services should be in public ownership and people should be accountable for their actions and what they do with public money. And sadly, at the moment, it's not like that here.
I don't know. I'm only seeing myself on the screen just now. I don't know. Sorry about that, people. That must have been quite frightening for you, but I'm back. The one you did miss out on, I think, Eva, was a national shipbuilding company we could also do with, because we're going to need, ferries, we're going to need fishery protection, etc., which brings me nicely on. Nice wee dovetail here, Lloyd. You and I had the pleasure on the 2 occasions of speaking to Stuart Ballantyne. Now, there's something post-independence we could absolutely be doing. He offered to build the entire fleet of catamarans that would replace, for the cost of the two, the Glen Sannox and the other one. That's what we need to be doing, those kind of things. But independence is the only way we can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. I still periodically have a look back on that programme we did with, or those 2 programmes we did with Stuart Ballantyne and Alf Baird, because contained in them is so much potential innovation for our future. But looking very specifically at Stuart Ballantyne's case for a national shipbuilding programme, something focused, something which recognises that we're a country with a huge, huge coastline, and that in some places, though we've lost this understanding, travel by water is better than travel by land. And that in actual fact, there are huge swathes of our country that we can't properly access because there is not the road infrastructure, but we could access them in the ways that they were done for hundreds upon hundreds of years, actively by the people of this country, by water. But all of that's been taken away from us. The primary reason for that is we don't have a steel industry anymore, and we've allowed our shipbuilding industry to become an arm of the military-industrial complex of Britain. This is a major, major problem. Now, what Stuart Bannatyne and the 30-year plan for Scottish shipbuilding, which would have huge effects on tourism, huge effects on trade, particularly with mainland Europe and Scandinavia. All of these, and indeed exporting of the expertise that would develop. The key thing that he said about this, though, is if you have a 30-year plan, then you're effectively saying to the people of a particular area, you and your sons and daughters have work for the next 30 years. And that it will grow, it will develop, it will innovate to maintain itself beyond those 30 years, because your coastline's not going away. The North Sea's not going away. The Irish Sea and the Atlantic and all of our lochs are not going away. They are there. They will require maritime input. That's a straightforward fact, if we choose to do it. But it's like I've said on other occasions, there's a great big book of innovation, of excitement and of positivity to the future if we recognise the problems that we have now as a country and what we need to do. Simple things like House Building Corporation allows us to build essential homes for essential workers in places where you cannot get essential workers, including teachers, doctors, dentists, nurses, in our rural areas. House Building Corporation allows you the ability to do that if you have a plan. If you have a plan for the repopulation of a depopulated country, remembering that most of our people in this country don't understand we're a depopulated country. They just think the Highlands is a big mystery wilderness land where nobody lived, which is utter and complete rubbish. All of these things fall into place when you set the imagination running. There's a guy called Simon Forrest who talks frequently on social media about this, because he is one of those people. He's one of these people who has those concepts of innovation, hence his involvement in the wave power and tidal power industry, and his recognition that we stand on the edge of a new energy revolution. But like the old energy revolution, which was shale oil, the second energy revolution, which was the discovery of North Sea oil. If we don't get our act together and become an independent country, not dependent on the economy of another country to dictate to us the pocket money we get to spend, then we will not be able to exploit this third energy bounty that has been given to us. And it's essential. If you care about people, if you care about the future generations of the country, then short-term thinking, like we currently have from all our politicians, particularly in Hollywood, but primarily in Westminster, especially in the scrabbling around Labour Party that we have at the moment. If we continue to play within the sandbox of British politics, then the innovation, imagination, and the possibilities for our country are limited to such a degree we might as well emigrate to Australia.
Going back in time, remember when the councils were building houses, then you remember the Scottish, what were they called, Scottish Special Housing, which was they built houses that were for reserve for incoming workers and things like that. But then the politicians got involved and streamlined it, and then the Tories got in to sell it all. That's a problem. But there's another one is that a parliament's just left here and gone to work, and he works on the Rhine ferries, or the Rhine, like that Viking cruises. He cruises up and down the Rhine all around. They start next week and they're booked till the end of October with 200 passengers every week. Now think of it. We've got in Scotland something like, is it 900 islands? I mean, it's something ridiculous like that. I've got it here. We have got 790 offshore islands. Imagine we had boats going round the coast of Scotland with tourists. Those ships could be built, going round into some beautiful harbours, bringing jobs to the local communities up that top west coast of Scotland, around the north of Scotland, onto the islands. All those things are possible, ladies and gentlemen, if we have independence and we can start taking control of our own destiny and our own industries, etc., and tourism. On this, it's I'm going to be a wee bit controversial here, I think. I put this, you've probably heard that the Joani Reid, the Labour MP, resigned. Although she received 20,000 in loans from her husband, he's been arrested on suspicion of spying Phil, and she felt the need to resign the whip because her husband had been arrested for spying. Now, I'm of the opinion that people are innocent until proved guilty, for a start, and two, she didn't commit the crime, or as far as we know, because the police haven't arrested her. I think sometimes we're too brutal in the UK, where why should the wife or the husband, doesn't matter, the spouse, take a fall because of the actions of their spouse? Or am I wrong?
It's a good point. Remember the maxim, innocent until proven guilty. So unless this is a slam dunk, as may be the case, then she should stand in position. And it's like people get thrown under the bus because of a cause, particularly around times like this, is very common, just before an election. This is normal. But this is the East Kilbride Straven MP. She says, it's been the worst week of my life. I don't know which one's Joani, looking at the picture of the two of them, but whatever, who cares? Rock and roll, this is the modern world, right? So Joani, she's been suspended. She has been suspended after her husband was arrested on suspicion of spying for China. Now, she said the move... The guy's called David Taylor. He was arrested on Wednesday as part of an ongoing police investigation. And the Met said 3 men aged 39, 43 and 68 were arrested by counter-terrorism officers in London and Wales after being accused of assisting a foreign intelligence service. Assisting a foreign intelligence service. This is on Thursday morning. The officer said all 3 had been released on bail. Reid, who said she was not under police investigation and has denied any wrongdoing, has faced questions about her business ties to her husband. Yeah, your point's a good one. Why is she suspended? Why is she not considered? Well, she's not even under investigation. She's not even under investigation. This is contamination by association and persecution by the press. And the question that will be really interesting here, in relation to the relationship between these 3 men, the alleged relationship between these 3 men and the Chinese government, are they agents? Is it espionage? Is it lobbying? Is it the sale for money of information? Is it, what is it? We don't know. So until we really know what's going on here, we should not be jumping to conclusions. And this woman, to be honest, not only is she not accused of doing anything, it appears she has not done anything wrong, yet she's suspended. That's politics. That's the sandbox that Lloyd was alluding to earlier.
Yeah, I mean, I've got no time for her. She's the one, she voted against a rape inquiry down when she was instructed in January down at Westminster. And then she starts attacking the Scottish government for not doing it. And then when the Scottish government say they're going to do it, oh yes, well, I made them do that. The hypocrisy of the woman. But on this, Alan, I ask you if you agree or disagree with me, that I think it's unfair that she's had to resign or been made to resign or whatever because of her husband's alleged transgressions.
I totally agree. I mean, you cannot hold someone else responsible for the actions of another. Now, some people may think, she had to know something. She was married to him. Could I just remind you about the special forces that infiltrated the IRA, where they had relationships with their targets? Many of them got them pregnant, and not one of these targets knew the other person was a British Secret Service. The British do it all the time. But you've got to ask yourself a question too, because her husband was the Labour candidate for North Wales Police and Crime Commissioner in 2016. Where was their vetting? Who vetted him? Why is he not being sacked if this is the case? I mean, it's just ludicrous. You've got, and if you're going to do this as well, it's got to be consistent. Because how many of the government at this present time are being instructed of their actions through the Friends of Israel? They are being directly told what to do by the Israeli government. Is that not just as bad as being told what to do or sending secrets to the Chinese government? If you're in our government, your only job is to protect this nation and make the nation flourish. It's to have nothing to do with the other nations, secret or not. So let's be consistent on this. If you're going to sack one, sack every single other one. So every single member who is signed up to the Friends of Israel, I'm expecting to see their resignations as this goes out.
Yep, you've taken away one of my next questions, Alan. Thank you. Well, actually, you were asking who did the vetting. Possibly, it might have been the Labour member party for Earley and Woodley, who is Huan Yang. Maybe she did the vetting. I don't know. But you're our legal eagle, Eva. Would you agree or disagree with us that this woman, you know, much as we disagree with her politics, do you think she's been a wee bit unfairly treated, being forced, or either jumping or being forced to jump?
Well, I understand from reports that she suspended herself. So that tells me, looking at the available evidence, which includes excerpts online from Companies House, that she is either a woman of substantial integrity who is determined to support her party and not to bring opprobrium or criticism to the Labour Party while this investigation is ongoing, or maybe, just maybe, there's something not quite right here, especially when you look at the enormous sums of money that appear to have arrived in the company that she operated and the company that her husband operated. You're talking six figures. But who am I to cast aspersions? Time will tell. There'll be investigations, they'll be full and they'll be complete, and it'll all come out in the wash. So no, she's not directly responsible for her husband's behaviour by any stretch of the imagination, but there are questions to be answered.
For sure. And as we say every week, you know, on here, you know, anyone's honey traps, bribery, giving us money, big donations, you know, get in touch with me. I'll accept them all. On this, Lloyd, Alan's opened it up for me. What I want to say is, but, you know, we don't know the extent of all this. I mean, was it just lobbying? Why is it that if you're lobbying on behalf of Russia or China or Iran, say, it's a criminal offence and you're going to jail and it's treason? As the guy went to jail, the Reform guy, for alleged lobbying on behalf of Russia. But when it's Labour Friends of Israel, Tory Friends of Israel, Liberal Friends of Israel, the Reform Friends of Israel, it's absolutely perfect. It's not a problem. Take as much money as you like. Yvette Cooper's had over £200,000 from the Labour Friends of Israel. There is a double talking and it stinks to high heaven.
Yes, it does. But I would point out to you that Joani Reid was also in receipt of very large amounts of money from Gary Lubner and from
Israel.
Effectively from Israel. And her husband, effectively, when he was a Labour Party official in Wales, administered the funds that were dispersed by the Zionists attached to Labour Friends of Israel. Now, there are those, and I heard this from the current Chief of the Defence Staff on Sky News yesterday, when he said that when you're dealing with Israel, you have to recognise that Israel is our ally. Okay, so allies get to do whatever they want, and law doesn't apply to allies. It's a bit like the argument we talked about last week about, you know, if you've got millions of pounds in the bank, you're clearly much more intelligent than the rest of the population. You know, these are fallacies. These are rubbish. Who decided that Israel was our ally? Was it the sons and daughters or husbands and fathers of the three sergeants hung in the Olive Grove in 1948? With the booby trap bombs attached to their dead bodies hung from piano wire by our allies in Israel. Who makes these decisions? We're currently, not officially, but pretty close to being at war with Iran. Who decided that? Who decided Iran? Iran was our enemy, not our ally. Who decided that? In what room? On what ballot paper did I see this? In what manifesto did I see this? Nowhere. The British operate on the basis of they do what they're told. British politicians do what they're told by a thing called the establishment. Phil understands this very, very clearly. The establishment is not just the Whitehall civil service. The establishment goes from those public school, prep schools at the age of 5, all the way through to Oxford and Cambridge, and then to Sandhurst and the Imperial War College. Now, power in the UK does not sit with the Prime Minister, as we've seen. How many Prime Ministers have we had in the past 10 years? 5, 6. So the power doesn't lie with the Prime Minister, because those people were all removed because of the establishment. And it is the British establishment that has decided that if Israel gives you money, you're getting money from an ally and it's to the benefit of the country. If you get money from China, you get money from, well, you know, it's a movable feast. South Africa would have been one of those bad countries at one point. North Korea was, you know, Yemen, any number of different countries becomes the bad guy. But who makes that decision? Did we all get to vote in a referendum that decided we make up a list of who are our enemies and who are our allies? No. The British establishment decided this. And that's one of the principal reasons that drew me into the national movement, was seeing the carnage that the British establishment caused across the world in my early years on this planet, which led me to believe that the only honourable way forward for the people of this country was to become an independent country and make our own foreign policy and choose our own allies, not have them imposed upon us by a British establishment that knows little or nothing about how we visualise the world. Effectively, the declaration of a country as an ally for the UK is done by people who see the world in a completely different way from 99.5% of the population of these islands. The only way for us and our future, and for our children too, to have an honourable future, a positive future, to contribute to humanity, is when we decide who is in the ally column and who is in the enemy column. Because I tell you, when Scotland gets the ability to choose that, the ally column will be big. The enemy column will be very, very small.
Yeah, indeed. And on that, Phil, this week, Swinney came out at one point and, lo and behold, was condemning the US and Israel for what they did. And then he sent one of his famous letters. He likes a good letter, a strong-worded letter on it. But if you, I beg your pardon, that's the wrong one. I've come out with the wrong picture there. But in it, he then started talking about, wait, I just remove this. Excuse me, folks. I've put out the wrong one. I'll come to that one. It's this one here, his strongly worded letter. Come on out, you come. And in it, as you'll notice, he then starts talking about the rules-based, the international rules-based system, not international law. That's a rollback, because the rules-based system is about America doing whatever they want with no consequences, Israel doing whatever it wants, no consequences, UK doing whatever it wants, no consequences. And that is, John pointing that out, shows that, was he got to? That he had to change from a complete condemnation to just going back to the rules-based system.
Yeah, it is a bit of a rollback. I mean, this was about 4 days ago he came out with that, and he said Iran attack against the international system. And he's talking about the US and Israel attack on Iran over that weekend some time ago, killing the supreme leader. Now, this is what he said was the US attack on Iran is not compatible with the international rule-based system. But speaking to the Press Association on Monday, John voiced his concern over the intervention, but stopped short of saying he considered it illegal, which it is. His comments come as around 300,000 Britons are believed to be in countries targeted by Iran. In defending itself, we hasten to add, though it's not clear how many are Scottish. Well, John, you should know how many were Scots. That's who you purport to represent, not the Brits, which is the problem here. But credit where it's due, in fairness, standing up, no matter how meekly, against the fascist beast that is USA and Israel in the world today is to be applauded. But you're absolutely bang on the rules-based system. This is Zionism. This is the neocon philosophy. These are the people who control us, Big Pharma, the military-industrial complex that Eisenhower warned us about when he left the presidency in 1961. It's about the energy companies. It's about all the people that would keep us on our knees. Capitalism gone wrong, the usury aspect of capitalism, and the rules-based system that he is talking about and will not rally against is the system that controls him, because he is doing the bidding of the system which will keep us on our knees, which is the establishment that Lloyd spoke about earlier. So no, credit for John for standing up, however so meekly, against the evil and the wrong of the war around the world, and we could talk forever on that and what the West is doing. But no, you lack a backbone, John. Get a backbone, take it down properly, and lead from the front, which you're never going to do.
Yeah, it's good. I mean, there is this, and this is a classic example of the international-based rules, Alan. Here it is. Merz, the German Chancellor, Iran should not be protected by international law. Really? Why not? Because you don't like them? We're just to suspend law because it doesn't suit you? That's what we're up against, Alan.
Yeah, I mean, the argument that they use is because Iran is not a democratic nation. It's a dictatorship. Why is it a dictatorship? I'll tell you. 1953, Iran had a democratically elected government. That government put Iran and its people first by nationalizing their oil industry, taking the money away from the greedy corporations and into the pockets of normal people. America and Britain didn't like it and went in and removed that democratic government. It wasn't ISIS. It wasn't any other terrorist organization. It was the United States of America and Great Britain that went in there and removed, like they do on many occasions in the West Asia, they removed democratically elected governments and caused this problem. And now it's come back to bite them. That's the biggest problem we have here. And every single person on this planet has a right to human rights. That is what is in the name, human rights. Not that only these people can have rights or only these people can have rights. Everyone is entitled to these rights. That's why it's called the International Human Rights Declaration. Now, the biggest problem we'll have is the greed, because there is money in the arms industry. There is no money in the peace industry. But instead of throwing bombs over there, we should be putting out a hand of goodwill and helping these people to use the resources to build the industries that their countries need, to build the houses that their countries need, to help them come out of poverty. Because they're in poverty, not because their country is poor, but because the West are stealing the resources. That is what is happening here. And if people, and we know it in Scotland, are we happy that England is stealing our resources? No, we're not. How do you think any other country is going to react when their resources are being stolen by the West? So come on, people, look at the evidence, not what you have been that's been broadcast by the British Bullshit Corporation or any other British media corporation. There is evidence online. Go and check the alternative media where you're getting the facts of the situation and not the manipulation that the governments of the West are trying to push down your throat.
Yeah. The other thing, the Chancellor of Germany said he wants to have the largest army in Europe. Well, when the last time the Germans had the largest army in Europe, how did that play out? Yeah, we don't want to go there again. But Eva, here's this is Jeremy Corbyn. Now, this seems reasonable to me. He's putting a bill through the Westminster Parliament that demands that the members of the UK approve military action before we use it, and for the use of British bases for anyone else having it, e.g. curtailing the Americans from just arriving at Mildenhall and flying on and bombing someone to shoot. But here's the thing, Eva. That's got as much chance of passing through the Westminster Parliament as I have of becoming the next Pope.
I wish that we weren't talking about United Kingdom air bases. I wish that we were talking about Scottish air bases. So whether this proposal from Jeremy Corbyn sees the further light of day or otherwise should be irrelevant, because people in our movement should be addressing how it is that the people of Scotland can elect a Scottish government who will have complete control over Scottish air bases, and then we'll decide with whom we will or will not cooperate. And the quicker that people get behind a united campaign for independence, the better. They can start by supporting Alliance to Liberate Scotland by contributing to our crowdfunder, which is live, and they can continue that by going to the Yes United event in Glasgow on the 14th of March, where hopefully we will be discussing not simply the economy and energy and how to make Scotland independent, but we'll be discussing the electoral system, the electoral process by which people can, with a united campaign, actually vote for independence this year and make Scottish participation in illegal wars a thing of the past, and ensure that the people of Scotland have the democratic right to elect the government they want to deal with defence and every other aspect of life in the fashion required by the people of this country, not by the people of what is in effect a foreign country.
Absolutely. I'm sure you're old enough, Lloyd, to remember Andy Capp, the famous cartoonist in there. And there's one where he's standing and the cartoon was just saying, he's talking to a policeman, and the policeman's writing down, he said, "I thought he was going to hit me, so I hit him first." And it was a cartoon to laugh at. Sadly, Marco Rubio of the Trump administration, they knew while they were negotiating, allegedly in good faith, that whatever happened, Israel was going to hit Iran. And they said, well, we knew if they hit Iran, we were going to get hit, so we hit them first, which makes it okay. No, it doesn't. It doesn't make it okay, does it? And it follows up, because this is what's happening out there now, Lloyd. Tehran, there's hospitals in flames, schools are being attacked. This because they knew their ally was going to start an illegal war. That's what we're tied to when we're in the British Union.
Indeed it is, but I think it would be wrong of us not to point out that the control, or rather the influence that Israel has over the United States has never been stronger than it is now. And the principal reason for that is that the Mossad spy, Jeffrey Epstein, gathered together so much evidence on important people in both political parties in the United States, members of their military, members of their diplomatic corps, and, not to forget, he also did exactly the same thing to the United Kingdom, did the same thing to France, Italy, Germany, and any country that he could. The Israelis have black compromising information on most of the important political leaders in Europe and across the world. That is obvious from the manner in which Israel is used and is constantly the exceptional case when it comes to military action. I find it incredible that we have to stand back while the children, the mothers, the fathers, the brothers and the uncles of poor people in a country that's been suffering sanctions for nearly 30 years are bombed from the sky by the most powerful military in the world and its controller. The belief that peace can be gained by decapitating the leaderships, that you can negotiate, and in the middle of negotiations you then kill the people you're negotiating with, remembering that has happened twice in the past year by the Israelis against Iranians negotiating in good faith. I don't think we in the West, because we've a concept of a demonized Iran, we have no concept really of the massive disaster it was in the killing of Khamenei, the supreme leader of Iran, which was effectively like
killing the Pope.
Yeah, killing the Pope on the steps of St. Peter's on Easter Sunday. You know what I mean? Yeah. The effect of it across the world. But we live in such a tiny insular world. You know, there's the insular world of politics, then there's the insular world of Britain, the country that doesn't want an educated population, the country that doesn't believe in telling us the truth. You know, it's interesting that here we are, we have a war in Iran, we had a war in Iraq. In the war in Iraq, they couldn't show us enough pictures of the destruction and the power and the might of the US and coalition forces that were raimed against Saddam Hussein. But isn't it odd how little we are actually seeing of the destruction at the moment? How little are we seeing of what Iran is achieving? Why is it? You know, I mean, I take a really simple thing. This started with the British ban on Russia Today, the Russian international television service. Now, if you're not frightened of information, you don't close down television stations. You don't ban books, you don't ban radios, and you don't jail writers. It's as simple as that. Effectively, by the closing of Russia Today, the British government denied the people of this country a vision of what is happening in Ukraine from a different perspective. Why did they do that? Because they fear it. Why is it we're seeing nothing, effectively nothing, of the attack and the attacks on particularly the Gulf states, but of Israel in particular, when, you know, media outlets across the world are telling their population what is actually happening. What coverage did British television give of the massacre of the 175 small children in the primary school in Tehran? You know, I remember, and it struck me. There was a moment of scandal in at the beginning of the war in Iraq when a missile was sent into a basement bunker, which the British and the Americans claimed was a command center for the Iraqi Revolutionary Guard, when in reality it turned out it was a bomb shelter for civilians, and over 200 were killed in that particular action. We saw that live. It was reported. We were allowed to think about it. Action was taken against those who carried out that vicious and cruel war crime. Whereas what have we got now, 22 years later? They're not even showing us the pictures. The BBC barely covered the funerals. And the issue here is not just because it's children. It's innocent civilian people who have no reason to be under the attack they are under, other than the desires for expansion by the Greater Israel Project, funded, supported, militarily supported by the United States of America, because the ruling leaders of the United States of America at this current moment are compromised so much by the Mossad agent Jeffrey Epstein and the Epstein files that they will do anything and everything that Israel wants them to do. Which brings us to the most dangerous question of all that was asked yesterday. Will the United States sanction Israel's use of nuclear weapons?
If that's what they want.
The real question is, does Israel require America's support to do that? From everything we're seeing at the moment, I would suggest to anyone and everyone, Israel requires no support from America in any action that it currently takes, because it does it, and once it's done, and then it puts its hand up and says, well, sorry, your line was engaged. We couldn't get through to you, so we just had to go ahead and do it. We in the West are currently being controlled by a tiny colonial power on the edge of the Mediterranean, and it's going to cost us dear. I've heard the word Armageddon used much during this particular event. I remember standing at a bus stop and looking up at a sign, and it said Megiddo. I was outside an Israeli army base and also a military prison. It's at a place called Megiddo in central Israel. Megiddo is the basis for the biblical Armageddon. Be careful what you think of these Americans and these fundamentalist preachers who cry for the rapture to happen. Those that would call and have called, indeed. There was a report by a particular US Army general who gave a morale-boosting speech to his troops by pointing out that what they were carrying out, what they were doing under the aegis of President Trump, was they were going to create the circumstances by which Jesus would return, and that we will all be taken to heaven in the rapture. That was the pitch from a US general to his troops. We are fighting so we can die, effectively.
Yes, they should rename this thing, not the Epic Fury. It should be Epic Einstein Fury, is what they should call the campaign, because that's what it is. And the other thing I noticed about this is the same people with the Union flags and the Israeli flag and their what do you call it? Their oh God, I can't get the word out of my head here. Anyway, in their social media, are the same people who are cheering this on, are the same people who are going to complain when there's hundreds of thousands of new refugees. They're cheering on what they say they hate the most. A couple of things, the clock's beating us. If I could just go to two things, Eva, a wee picture. You've maybe heard this week that the MPs by the end of this Parliament are going to be given a salary of £110,000 by the end of this, and they really are taking it very seriously, because on the same day as they announced 110,000, while, for example, my nine members of my family are getting bombed in Dubai, when there's 300 Brits in countries getting bombed, our politicians, by God, they were on it. They were on it. They were looking at, they were taking care of things. Eva.
Here we go, we're going to turn. Human drinks.
For that nonsense, you'll notice the green girl wasn't far away from the front. She's not taking long to her to get her established. But it's quite embarrassing. Let them eat cake, eh?
Qu'il mange de la brioche, indeed, Marie Antoinette reincarnated. It's interesting, as you pointed out, Roddy, to see that the Green champion is there in the forefront. You know, what price those promises that she made to get elected, that should be a Greens party political broadcast from now until kingdom come. I want a list, though, of the MPs that refuse to participate in it, because maybe there's some hope for some of them who might not be as utterly out of touch as those in the video actually are. An absolute disgrace when you've got, in that Hannah Spencer's constituency, some of the worst, most difficult areas of the country in terms of statistics for poverty and all related matters. And what does she do in her first week in Westminster? She's out for a boogie. When there are people in her constituency who probably voted for her, listen to her promises, they're ill, they're dying, they're not getting appropriate NHS care, they're not getting the education for their kids that they should have, there's issues in respect of home care for the elderly, waspy women, pensioners doing without, working people struggling to make ends meet, energy crisis, fuel crisis, and the world is at war. And what does Westminster do? Goes for a wee dance. It tells you all you need to know.
It'd make you sick. I mean, more on hypocrisy. Just as the attack, the illegal against international attack takes care in Iran, and 180 young girls between the ages 7 and 12, I think it was, are murdered by the American Israelis. What did the Americans do? This has got to be the irony of all irony.
Good afternoon. The 10,113 meeting of the Security Council is called to order.
That was, Phil, Melania Trump, as you can see, chairing a UN Security Council meeting on the dangers to children in conflict. I mean, the hypocrisy, I mean, that's off the Richter scale.
This is symptomatic of the devastation around the world that this order is causing. This is an Epstein girl, now embedded in an Epstein government, America, and allied with Epstein governments around the world like Israel, UK, France and Germany. I mean, hats off to Spain, where I'm currently situated, and you are, Roddy, for finally making a stand against this evil. Hopefully the tide is turning. But I don't know if Techie can do this. We need to be informed about what's really going on. I think the first step to doing anything is to get information. So if you could, Techie, I've got a list of non-MSN mainstream media sources that we've all commented. Alan's mentioned, Leva's mentioned it, Lloyd's mentioned it. I've posted this list of mine on my Facebook page. Now, it's running along the bottom of the page. Thanks for that. And Lloyd is right. Netanyahu in Hebrew, which he only does when speaking to Israelis, announced a big surprise for Iran if it goes badly for Israel. Armageddon, indeed. And the rapture that Lloyd mentioned is a Christian end of the world scenario that radicals like Ted Cruz pray for in America. Our Western governments are part of the neocon system that embrace usury capitalism, Zionism, and downright terrorism. The US, Israel, UK, and EU governments are the main cause of problems on this planet today, and why we have come closer to human annihilation than any time since the Bay of Pigs episode under Kennedy, and it's happened on multiple occasions. The West created the proxy war with Russia during Ukraine. Check this list of people. These are credible professionals who have rallied against the mainstream media and stood up for the truth. Please look into it yourself if you don't believe us. The proxy war with Russia using in Ukraine, around 2 million dead Ukrainians and a few 100,000 dead Russians later, it still drags on. Israel, the main problem in Western Asia, and we would call it the Middle East, continues to bomb all its neighbours that do not kowtow to their will, and even some that do, like Qatar. And also, Mossad continue espionage and false flag exercise across the region. And the US will close the North Atlantic gap as the ice melts in the Arctic, yet ice gets stronger in the USA. And the US will also pivot towards China as it challenges the leading countries in BRICS. Understand this. The West and its corrupt controllers want to retain the Western US-led hegemony for the benefit of the billionaires, and that is why we're killing, people are being killed in our name all around the world. We must stand up to this evil, and to do that we have to be informed. Please check that list.
Please do. It's a great list. I watched them all myself. I noticed we're in there. I like that. Alan, last one to you coming up. This is your favourite politician in Scotland. Listen right to the end, folks.
Lovely. As SNP for 13 years, until you came into power, and I've never been more disappointed in a politician in all my life. Thank you. Support women, listen to women. Have you ever listened to spoke to women? Excuse me, sorry. Because I did. Yeah, I did. I spoke to the women that were locked up with the violent male prisoners. Except that bit's not true. Yes, but I did. Yeah, but so they're lying to me then. It's not true. It is true. Yes, it is, Nicola. Shame on you.
Nicola Sturgeon, destroyer of women's rights.
Lovely jubbly. Someone giving it to her. And she's still lying, Alan, still denying. The words fail me.
Well done to the women. Stand up and hold her accountable, because that's something that Sturgeon doesn't like being done. It's being held accountable. So congratulations to them. But again, you hear it, the lies just spew from that woman's mouth. Did she allow a man into a woman's prison? Yes, she did. Is there still men in women's prison? Yes, they are. And that's why the SNP must be challenged on the 7th of May. And that's why you cannot, under any circumstances, give your second vote to the woke, idiotic Greens, because they are not about independence. They're about woke stupidness and danger to women. So on the 7th of May, the only party who is standing for the rights of Scots and the rights of women and the defence of children is the Alliance to Liberate Scotland. So put your X beside their name.
Indeed, folks. Well, we'll come to the end. Up in the top left-hand corner, folks, there you can see the crowdfunder for Alliance to Liberate Scotland. Go on, dig deep. Did you notice this week, folks, the Labour Party handed £500,000, £500,000 from down in England to defeat our nation. You know, if we all put in a fiver or a tenner each, we'd have enough to fight them back. Until we see you again, you and yours, please, take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.